Hi, my name's Sue Whiting, and I'm the author of Tilda. Okay, I think readers can expect to step back in time to Adelaide 1901 and into Brushwood Convent and Orphanage for Girls, where they're going to meet a very feisty, determined, and big-hearted character, young girl called Matilda Moss, or Tilda as her friends affectionately call her. Now, Tilda is a loyal friend and she's a keen writer, but she has been placed in Brushwood by her father. Her mother died when she was quite young. Hard times have fallen on her dad, and he has decided he needs to go off to fight in the Boer War. There's no one to look after Tilda, so he puts her in an orphanage. Now, life is hard in an orphanage in 1901 in Adelaide, and life is particularly hard for Tilda because the head nun there seems to have it in for Tilda, and she is trying to convince Tilda that her father is never coming back for her and that she is an orphan. Well, this is my very first historical novel. And to be honest, I put off the writing of this book. I've been thinking about it for a long time, but I put off the writing of this book for years because I felt daunted by the historical research that would be needed to bring this type of story to life. But I was very fortunate in that I got a May Gibbs um, Creative Time Fellowship, and I was able to go to Adelaide for a whole month and spend a month there to research the book. So I was on the ground in Adelaide, which is so useful when you're trying to write any book. And so I was able to walk the streets and imagine what it was like in 1901, look at all the beautiful historical buildings from the period, visit local historians and go to the State Library and really start to build up a picture of what life was like in 1901 Adelaide. I also, and importantly, got to visit a number of institutions that were once orphanages in that period in the late 1800s, early 1900s, and went on some really interesting tours with people who are there now and was able to hear the stories about what life was like, the hardships, and use those different institutions to build my own invented convent and orphanage of Brushwood. Then that was pre-COVID, and luckily, and then once COVID hit, I was hoping to go back to Adelaide and I couldn't, of course. So I resorted to online resources, in particular Trove, which is amazing because you can access historical newspapers and images and so forth, and also emails and online phone calls and with historians and so forth. But it was a really comprehensive, daunting kind of procedure to go through to try to find out enough to be able to bring that period to life in some kind of accuracy. Well, it's one of those things. This story is actually inspired by my grandmother's story. And my grandmother died when I was a small baby, so I never got to meet her. But her story always intrigued me, mainly because we knew so few details about her life. And I did some family history research, and I still couldn't find out many details about her life. But I did know a few important details, and that is that her mother died when she was 2 in Adelaide, that her father put her in an orphanage, a Catholic convent, and even though he was Jewish, and he went off to the Boer War. Now, he didn't come back from the Boer War. He went off and eventually ended up in England and started a whole new life. And as far as I'm aware, he never, ever made contact with his young daughter in Australia ever again, which was really sad. And while I couldn't find out exactly what happened to my grandmother during her childhood, I wanted to find out what it might have been like. I mean, that's that curiosity of an author, isn't it? What would it be like to be that person? And I felt compelled to find out what it was like in the turn of the century, in those early 1900s, and why my great grandfather might have abandoned his child, and what the families were like, and what might have driven him to do that. So it's sort of exploring those questions that started the story off. Now, the story is not the story of my grandmother, because I don't know it, but that's what started the whole process. Okay, well, I always want my readers to feel all the feels. That's the most important thing. I like to have a book that has a lot of heart. And I also like my readers to always be, quickly turning the pages because they're desperate to find out what's going to happen next. But with Tilda, there's something else I wanted my readers to take away. And there's been an early review by Elsa, who was age 10. And I'm going to read it here because this says everything. And she said, everyone should read this book because it shows how brave, independent, and strong girls are, and that you can't give up on what you know is the truth. And to me, that is absolutely everything. That's it. That's what I want readers to take away, particularly about how strong girls can be, and independent and brave. And that whole idea, you can't give up on the truth, because in the story, Tilda's truth about her father and what she believes her father's coming back to her, but that truth is really challenged by this Sister Agatha, and that's a big theme in the story. Young readers are the best. I often say to kids at school visits that I write for young kids because they're interesting and adults are boring. They really like that. They think that's very, controversial. But, I love young readers because they're enthusiastic and they're honest, sometimes brutally so, but that's okay. And as I said, they're so much more interesting than adults. The thought of writing for adults to me is just not appealing at all. I kind of feel like it'll be sort of boring. And I do love exploring, particularly that sort of 10 plus age group. It's a time when I have vivid memories of that time, not necessarily all the events, but how I felt and my place in the world at that time. And it's a time of great change. So it's really interesting period to explore as a writer and unpack, and then to try to create these characters that are navigating this time when they're changing so much, and doesn't matter whether it's a historic novel or whether it's a contemporary novel, we're all pretty much the same over the centuries, and the same things concern us. And it's a really interesting, there's a lot of interesting content and ideas to explore. Okay, I'll start with the most glamorous. There's not too many. But I think the most glamorous parts is when you get the chance to go to festivals, whether it's a big festival or a small festival. That's when you sort of feel, you get to go, hang out in the green room, and you get lovely food, and sometimes you get someone that's looking after you and taking you to your event. And so you do feel like you're a little bit special, and it is a little bit glamorous at times. And to be able to stand up on stage with a, big audience and share your stories, and have the go and sign books and so forth. So that's kind of glamorous. And particularly, I think sometimes when you get to meet some celebrities in the green room, that's always fun. It doesn't happen often enough, but it is fun. Now, the least glamorous part of writing, I think, is all the rest of it. But I think, I suppose the time when I feel the least glamorous, and it's probably the time that I actually enjoy writing the most, is when I get caught out by my friends or neighbours who drop by unexpectedly, say at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and I'm still in my pajamas without my hair brushed or my teeth brushed either. And so that's kind of a bit unglamorous, but to me, in another way, I love that because it means that I've been so consumed by my story that I've lost track of time, and I've just been in the zone. But I'd say that it's not a particularly glamorous job, really, being an author. It's really a lonely job in many ways, because you spend a lot of time in your own imagination, and creating these stories by yourself.